Russia is drowning, not in war, but in vodka. Between January and October 2024 alone, Russians guzzled a staggering 1.84 billion liters of alcohol, the highest volume recorded since 2017. That's enough booze to fill 736 Olympic-sized swimming pools, a grim toast to a nation spiraling towards self-destruction. And the numbers only get worse. Vodka, Russia's signature drink and its silent executioner, leads the surge. In just 10 months, Russians downed 620 million liters of the stuff. Still, wine sales hit 470 million liters, while sparkling wine consumption has jumped by an astonishing 61% since 2017. Meanwhile, the country's alcohol dependency crisis is roaring back to life, with 54,200 new alcohol use disorder diagnoses in 2022, marking a chilling reversal after a decade of decline. This is more than just a public health disaster. This is the collapse of a nation in real time. As Putin's war in Ukraine drags on, Russians are drinking themselves into oblivion, numbing the pain of a shattered economy, the terror of conscription, and the staggering loss of life on the battlefield. This is not just escapism, it's engineered self-destruction. Because in Russia, vodka was never just a drink. It has been a weapon. For centuries, Russian rulers have intentionally fueled mass alcoholism to keep their people weak, obedient, and too drunk to resist. Putin is no different. While he dreams of restoring Russia's former glory, his own population is drinking itself into extinction, dying younger, fighting weaker, and fading faster than at any point in modern history. This is Russia's real war, and it's one Putin is losing. To understand how vodka is destroying Russia today, we have to uncover how its leaders have used it for centuries, not just as a national vice, but as a tool for power, submission, and decay. For centuries, Russian rulers have used alcohol not just to profit but to pacify, turning an intoxicating drink into a lethal weapon of obedience. It all began in the 1480s, when Ivan III, the Grand Prince who laid the foundations of Russia, noticed something about his people. They drank. A lot. But instead of seeing this as a social problem, he saw an opportunity. Ivan banned peasants from producing their own alcohol and declared that only the crown could sell it. Overnight, vodka became state property, and with it, so did the people. This wasn't just a business move. It was a system of control, one that would last for centuries. The czars flooded the empire with state-owned vodka, ensuring it remained cheap enough to keep the masses perpetually drunk, but profitable enough to fill the royal treasury. Because a drunk peasant doesn't riot, he doesn't protest, he obeys. The system was so effective that when Catherine the Great wanted to reward her nobles, she didn't give them land, she gave them vodka monopolies. Selling state-approved alcohol became one of the most lucrative businesses in Russia, guaranteeing both money and submission for those in power. Then came the communists, who at first called out the system for what it was, a weapon against the people. Early Soviet propaganda even showed revolutionaries smashing vodka bottles as if breaking chains. But that didn't last. Stalin saw the value of vodka too. He opened the state distilleries, selling it cheap and branding it as the people's vodka. It was the same tool of oppression, just repackaged under a red flag. George Orwell even satirized this in Animal Farm, where the revolutionary animals destroyed liquor at first, only for their new leader to hoard it for himself. By the 1970s and 1980s, as the Soviet economy crumbled and the war in Afghanistan dragged on, vodka wasn't just a tool of control, it was a lifeline. The state relied on alcohol sales to prop up its failing economy, and the people relied on alcohol to escape their misery. The situation became so extreme that vodka bottles were manufactured without resealable caps, because in Russia, once you open a bottle, you don't stop until it's empty. And now this centuries-old blueprint is alive and well. The leaders have changed, the branding has evolved, but the core principle remains. A drunk nation is an obedient nation. Enter modern Russia. Putin may not drink like his predecessors, but he understands the power of vodka better than anyone. Instead of direct state control, he's handed the reins to oligarchs loyal to his regime. These modern vodka barons keep prices low, ensuring that in Russia's poorest, most desperate regions, alcohol remains cheaper than hope. And the results are catastrophic. The most alarming impact is seen in what demographers call the Russian cross, the point in the early 1990s when Russia's death rate surpassed its birth rate, creating a demographic crisis that continues today. Alcohol is robbing Russian men of a full decade of life. With an average lifespan of just 68 years compared to 78 for women, Russia has one of the worst gender gaps in life expectancy worldwide. And it's no mystery why. A quarter of all male deaths are alcohol-related. This gender gap is no small matter. In 2024, Russian men lived to an average age of just 68 compared to 78 for women. It's a lot less than men in countries like Japan, Switzerland, or Australia. And in some Russian regions, particularly in rural areas, male life expectancy plummets even lower, to around 60 years. This demographic disaster directly impacts Russia's military ambitions. As Russia struggles to find enough soldiers for its war in Ukraine, it faces a shrinking pool of young men. According to a 2023 study published in The Lancet, approximately 30% of deaths among Russian men of working age are directly attributable to alcohol consumption. This translates to hundreds of thousands of potential soldiers, workers, and fathers lost to vodka each year. As military analyst Pavel Felgenhauer noted in a 2023 interview with Deutsche Welle, Russia's demographic crisis fueled by alcoholism is a strategic vulnerability that affects everything from military readiness to economic productivity. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, alcohol consumption has surged dramatically. According to RBC, a Russian business news outlet, vodka sales jumped by 10% in the first year of the war alone. The pattern is eerily familiar. During the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1980s, alcohol consumption also spiked, as it did during the Chechen Wars of the 1990s. War and vodka have always been deadly companions in Russian history. Why the dramatic increase? Anxiety about loved ones being conscripted into the army, fear of speaking out against the government, economic hardships caused by Western sanctions, and the looming threat of nuclear confrontation with the West have all driven Russians to seek solace in the bottle. As Ruslan Iziev, who heads a Moscow-based addiction clinic, told the Russian newspaper Kommersant, social and economic upheavals, increased geopolitical confrontations, and sanctions have somewhat slowed progress in reducing excessive alcohol consumption. This clinical language masks a brutal reality. Russians are self-medicating against the trauma of Putin's war. Perhaps most telling are the stories coming from the front lines themselves. Reports from Ukraine indicate that many Russian soldiers fight while intoxicated. Ukrainian intercepts of Russian military communications, verified by Western intelligence agencies, have revealed Russian commanders complaining about drunken soldiers being unable to perform basic military tasks. Some captured Russian soldiers have admitted they were given vodka before assaults to steady their nerves, a practice dating back to the Second World War. The devastation extends far beyond just health statistics and military readiness. The social fabric of Russia is unraveling under the weight of its alcohol crisis. In the Republic of Karelia, a region in northwestern Russia, local authorities proposed restricting alcohol sales in October 2024, citing horrific mortality figures. According to the region's health minister, Mikhail Oklopov, alcohol-related deaths in Karelia increased by 10% in the first half of 2024 alone. "We are losing our population," he stated bluntly in a regional government meeting as reported by Reuters. According to Russia's Interior Ministry in 2023, more than 40% of all violent crimes in Russia were committed by people under the influence of alcohol. Domestic violence, already a serious problem in Russia, has worsened substantially since the war began. A 2023 report by the Russian Justice Initiative found that alcohol was involved in more than 60% of domestic violence cases. Then there's the economic toll. The Russian economy loses an estimated 2 to 3% of its GDP annually, due to alcohol-related productivity losses, healthcare costs, and premature deaths, according to a 2023 study by the Higher School of Economics in Moscow. That's roughly equivalent to what Russia spends on education each year. Russia has tried to tackle its alcohol problem before. During the mid-1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev launched an anti-alcohol campaign that temporarily reduced consumption by restricting sales hours and increasing prices. The result? Alcohol-related deaths dropped and male life expectancy increased by 2 years. But the campaign was ultimately abandoned due to massive public resistance and the explosion of illegal alcohol production. Russians simply started making their own homemade liquor, known as samagon, often with deadly contaminants. The black market thrived and the state lost revenue without significantly reducing consumption in the long term. Putin initially seemed committed to reducing alcohol consumption. Between 2003 and 2017, alcohol consumption in Russia fell from a record high of 20 liters of pure alcohol equivalent per capita to just 7 liters. This was achieved through a series of measures including higher taxes, advertising restrictions, and limits on sales hours. Unlike Gorbachev's abrupt campaign, these changes were implemented gradually, and crucially, they didn't threaten the profits of Russia's powerful alcohol industry. As Dmitry Medvedev, then Prime Minister, said in 2012, "We are not prohibitionists. Our goal is not to ban alcohol, but to make consumption civilized." What's particularly striking is how Russia's approach differs from that of neighboring Finland and Sweden, countries that once had similar drinking problems. These nations implemented comprehensive strategies including high taxation, state monopolies on retail sales, limited hours of availability, and extensive public health campaigns. The result? Significant reductions in alcohol-related harm without triggering widespread illegal production. Russia could adopt similar approaches, but there's a crucial difference. The Nordic countries viewed alcohol as a public health challenge, while Russian leadership has historically viewed it as a political tool. During the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia, alcohol restrictions were temporarily eased to create a festive atmosphere. Immediately after the event, consumption dropped again. This demonstrated that Russia can control alcohol consumption when it wants to. The question is whether it's in the government's interest to do so. Even more telling was the Russian government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. While most countries saw alcohol sales as non-essential businesses and restricted them during lockdowns, Russia declared alcohol stores essential businesses that would remain open even during the strictest quarantine measures. According to addiction specialist Dr. Yevgeny Bryan, who spoke with Radio Free Europe in April 2023, this sent a clear message about the government's priorities regarding alcohol availability. With Russia's government now focused entirely on the war effort, alcohol policy has fallen off the agenda. As a Russian health official told the Moscow Times in January 2024, there's no political will to address the alcohol problem right now. The focus is entirely on the special military operation and maintaining social stability. Alcohol helps keep the population compliant. The contrast with the Soviet Union's final years is striking. In the late 1980s, Gorbachev's anti-alcohol campaign was part of a broader reform effort aimed at revitalizing Soviet society. Today's Russia shows no such reformist impulse. Instead, as political scientist Vladimir Gelman noted in a 2023 article for the Journal of Democracy, the current regime appears content to manage Russia's decline rather than address its fundamental problems. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's alcohol industry was privatized. The former state monopoly was broken up and sold off to well-connected businessmen who would later become oligarchs. Today, Russia's alcohol industry is dominated by a small number of powerful companies with close ties to the Kremlin. Roust Corporation, owned by billionaire Roustem Tarico, controls about 13% of Russia's vodka market. Beluga Group, another major player, is run by Alexander Michetin, who has been careful to maintain good relationships with the Russian government. These companies and others like them have seen their profits soar as Russians drink more to cope with the war and economic hardship. The relationship between the alcohol industry and the Russian government is symbiotic. The industry provides significant tax revenue. About 2% of the federal budget comes from alcohol taxes. And in return, the government ensures regulatory decisions favor the industry. The vodka industry's influence extends into Russian culture as well. Despite the devastating impact of alcohol on public health, vodka continues to be celebrated in Russian media, literature, and entertainment. Popular Russian films and television shows often portray heavy drinking as a normal, even admirable aspect of Russian identity and masculinity. Attempts to challenge these cultural narratives are frequently dismissed as unpatriotic or influenced by Western values. Dr. Maria Neufeld, a researcher who studies alcohol policy in Russia, explained in a 2023 article for the journal Addiction that Russia faces a perfect storm of factors that maintain high alcohol consumption: cultural acceptance, industry influence, economic dependence, and political convenience. This perfect storm has created a situation where meaningful reform seems almost impossible. A Russia weakened by demographic collapse and widespread alcoholism is not just a humanitarian tragedy, it's a global security concern. As male life expectancy drops and the working-age population shrinks, Russia's economic and military power will likely decline. This could lead to greater instability in a nuclear-armed state, raising alarming questions about command and control of Russia's vast nuclear arsenal. Russia maintains the world's largest nuclear stockpile with approximately 5,889 nuclear warheads as of 2024, according to the Federation of American Scientists. The safe maintenance and control of these weapons requires a stable, skilled workforce of nuclear technicians, military officers, and security personnel. As alcoholism continues to devastate Russia's working-age male population, precisely the demographic that staffs these facilities, the risks of accidents, miscalculations, or security breaches grow substantially. Some security analysts have begun to take note. A 2023 report by the Atlantic Council warned that Russia's demographic crisis, exacerbated by alcoholism, creates unpredictable dynamics within a nuclear power. The report noted that as Russia's conventional military capabilities decline due to population shrinkage, the country might become more reliant on its nuclear deterrent, concerning prospect for global security. Russia is not alone in facing addiction challenges. The United States is grappling with an opioid epidemic that has many similarities to Russia's vodka crisis. Both involve addictive substances being widely distributed among populations suffering from economic insecurity and despair. Both have resulted in declining life expectancy. The key difference, however, is that in the U.S., the opioid crisis is recognized as a national emergency, with significant resources directed toward addressing it. Russian historian and alcohol expert Mark Lawrence Schrad pointed out in a 2023 interview with Business Insider that alcohol has historically served as a social anesthetic during times of national trauma in Russia. This pattern continues today, with increased vodka consumption correlating with periods of political repression and economic hardship. Alcoholism itself can lead to unpredictable social explosions. Social media videos from 2023 and 2024 show increasing incidents of public drunkenness and alcohol-related disorder, particularly in regions hardest hit by military conscription. In September 2024, police in Novosibirsk had to respond to a riot that broke out when a local store ran out of discounted vodka, an incident that was quickly scrubbed from Russian news sites but spread on Telegram channels. Even more concerning is the growing problem of alcohol-related extremism. A 2024 report by the Carnegie Endowment noted that alcohol consumption is increasingly linked to extremist violence in Russia, with far-right groups deliberately recruiting in environments where heavy drinking occurs. The report warned that the combination of nationalist ideology, economic grievance, and alcoholic disinhibition creates a volatile social mixture. If current trends hold, Russia is heading for demographic collapse. The United Nations estimates that the country's population will plummet from 146 million today to around 135 million by 2050. But the real crisis isn't just numbers. it's who is disappearing. The sharpest decline will be among working-age men, the very people Russia needs to fuel its economy, fight its wars, and sustain its future. And the effects are already here. In Russia's rural regions, vodka isn't just a drink. It's a slow-motion death sentence. Families shattered, violence surging, entire communities fading. A 2023 survey by Russia's Public Opinion Foundation found that 68% of Russians consider alcoholism a very serious or extremely serious problem, yet they feel powerless to stop it. And the Kremlin? Silent. This isn't just a Russian tragedy, it's a global threat. A Russia crippled by alcoholism is unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. It's not just the people drinking themselves into oblivion, it's the officials, the soldiers, the policymakers who are steering the country's future. What happens when a nuclear-armed nation is run by men drowning in vodka? Yet, despite everything, some Russians are fighting back. Grassroots groups, including Russian Alcoholics Anonymous, continue their work despite being labeled foreign agents. Local health officials push for reforms, only to be shut down by bureaucrats who profit from the alcohol industry. Meanwhile, a younger generation, watching their fathers and grandfathers drink themselves to death, is drinking less than their predecessors. As Leo Tolstoy once wrote, "Alcohol is a poison, harmful to the soul and body. Therefore, it is a great sin to drink alcohol and to offer it to others. And it is an even greater sin to produce and sell this poison." More than a century later, Russia's leaders are still committing that sin. The question isn't whether vodka is destroying Russia. The evidence is overwhelming. The real question is, does Russia have the will to save itself? And if it doesn't, what happens next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is this crisis reversible, or is Russia already too far gone? And make sure you subscribe to our channel for more great content.